Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukah or whatever you celebrate, guys. Hi Keepers, it's Summer back with another video reading you another chapter of Keeper of the Lost Cities Book 1 by Shannon Messenger. Now, grab your blanket, get all comfy, grab your crunchy snack, mine's popcorn, and sit down and relax while I read you Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger, Chapter 2. And here's your llama bookmark. You are welcome. So, let's get started. Now, if you remember from the last chapter, Sophie just met Fitz and has just run into traffic. Okay, so chapter 2. The next second was a blur. The car swerved right, missing Sophie by inches, then jumped the curb and sideswiped a streetlight. The heavy steel lantern cracked from its base and plummeted towards Sophie. No! It was her only thought as her instincts took over. Her hands shot into the air, her mind pulling strength from somewhere deep in her gut, pushing it out through her fingertips. She felt the force collide with the falling lantern, gripping on like it was an extension of her arm. As the dust settled, she looked up and gasped. The bright blue lantern floated above her, somehow held up by her mind. It didn't even feel heavy, though she was sure it weighed a ton. "Put it down," a familiar, accented voice warned, bringing her out of her trance. She shrieked and dropped her arm without thinking. The streetlight hurtled toward them. "Watch out!" Fitz yelled, yanking her out of the way of a... "Watch out!" Fitz shouted, yanking her out of the way a split second before the lantern crashed to the ground. The force of the impact knocked them over, and they tumbled to the sidewalk. Fitz's body broke her fall as she landed across his chest. Time seemed to stop. She stared into his eyes that were now stretched as wide as they could go, trying to sort through the flurry of thoughts and questions swirling around in her head, to find something coherent. "How did you do that?" he whispered. "I have no idea." She sat up, replaying the past few seconds in her mind. Nothing made sense. "We need to get out of here," Fitz warned, pointing to the driver who was staring at them like he'd witnessed a miracle. "He saw," she gasped, feeling her chest tighten with panic. Fitz pulled her to her feet and got up. "Come on, let's get out of sight." She was too overwhelmed to figure out a plan on her own, so she didn't resist when he dragged her down the street. "Which way?" he asked when they reached the first intersection. She didn't want to be alone with him, so she pointed north toward the San Diego Zoo, where there was sure to be a crowd even during a firestorm. They took off running, though no one was following, and for the first time in her life, Sophie missed hearing thoughts. She had no idea what Fitz wanted, and it changed everything. Her mind ran through terrifying scenarios, most of which involved government agents, throwing her into dark vans to run experiments on her. She watched the road, ready to bolt at the first sign of anything suspicious. They reached the zoo's massive parking lot, and Sophie relaxed when she saw people outside milling around their cars. Nothing would happen with so many witnesses. She slowed her pace to a walk. "What do you want?" she asked when she caught her breath. "I'm here to help you, I promise." His voice sounded sincere. Didn't make it easier to believe him, though. "Why were you looking for me?" She tugged at a loose eyelash, more than a little afraid of the answer. He opened his mouth and hesitated. "I'm not sure if I'm supposed to tell you." "How am I supposed to trust you if you won't answer my questions?" He considered that for a second. "Okay, fine. But I don't know much. My father sent me to find you. We've been looking for a specific girl your age, and I was supposed to observe and report back to him like always. I wasn't supposed to talk to you." He frowned like he was disappointed with himself. "I just couldn't figure you out. You don't make any sense." "What does that mean?" "It means you're different from what I expected. Your eyes really threw me off." "What's wrong with my eyes?" She touched her eyelids, suddenly self-conscious. "We all have blue eyes, so when I saw them, I figured we had the wrong girl again. But we didn't." He looked at her with something like awe. You're really one of us." She stopped and held her hands. "Whoa! Hang on. What do you mean, one of us?" He glanced over his shoulder, frowning when he spotted a crowd of fanny pack wearing tourists within earshot. He pulled her down a deserted corner of the parking lot, ducking behind a dark green minivan. "Okay, there's no easy way to explain this, so I'm just going to say it. You're not human, Sophie. For a second, she was too stunned to speak. Then a hysterical laugh escaped her lips. Not human, she repeated, shaking her head. Right. Where are you going? He asked as she moved toward the sidewalk. You're insane! And I'm insane for trusting you. She kicked the ground as she stomped away. I'm telling the truth, he called. Just think for a minute, Sophie. The last thing she wanted was to listen to another word he said, but the plea in his voice made her stop and face him. Can humans do this? He closed his eyes and vanished. He was only gone for a second, but it was enough to leave her reeling. She leaned against the car, feeling everything spin around her. But I can't do that, she argued, taking deep breaths to clear her head. You have no idea what you can do when you set your mind to it. Think of what you did with that pole a few minutes ago. He seemed to be sure. It almost made sense. But how could that be? And if she wasn't human, what was she? And that is the end of chapter 2. So let me see how long chapter 3 is. I might read a little bit of that. That's a reasonable amount. How long was this video so far? 6 minutes. So I'll read a few pages of chapter 3. So what? Sophie managed to say when she finally found her voice. You're saying I'm an alien? She held her breath. Fitz erupted into laughter. Her cheeks grew hot, but she was also relieved. She didn't want to be an alien. No, he said when he managed to compose himself. I'm saying you're an elf. An elf? The word hung in the air between them, a foreign object that didn't belong. An elf, she repeated. Visions of tiny people, visions of little people in tights with pointy ears danced through her brain, but she couldn't help giggling. You don't believe me? Did you really expect me to? I guess not. He ran his hands through his hair, making it stick out in wavy spikes, kind of like a rock star. Could someone that good looking be crazy? I'm telling you the truth, Sophie. I don't know what else to say. Okay, she agreed. If he refused to be serious, so would she. Fine, I'm an elf. Am I supposed to help Frodo destroy the ring and save Middle-earth? Or do I have to make toys in the North Pole? He let out a sigh, but a smile hid in the corners of his mouth. Would it help if I show you? Oh, sure, this ought to be good. She folded her arms as he pulled out a slender silver wand with intricate carvings etched into the sides. At the tip, a small brown crystal sparkled in sunlight. Is that your magic wand? She couldn't resist asking. He rolled his eyes. Actually, it's a pathfinder. He spun the crystal and locked it into place with the silver latch on the top. Now, this can be dangerous. Do you promise you'll do exactly what I tell you to do? Her smile faded. That depends on what I have to do. You need to take my hand and concentrate on holding on. And by concentrate, I mean you can't think about anything else, no matter what happens. Can you do that? Why? Do you want proof or not? She wanted to say no. He couldn't actually prove anything. What was he going to do, whisk her away to some magic elf land? But she was curious. And really, what harm could come from holding someone's hand? She willed her palms not to sweat as their fingers laced together. Her heart did that stupid fluttery thing again, and her hand tingled everywhere their skin touched. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the parking lot again. Okay, we're alone. We go on 3. You ready? What happens on 3? He shot her a warning look, and then she scowled at him. But she bit her tongue and concentrated on holding his hand, ignoring her racing heart. Seriously, when did she become one of those silly girls? 1, he counted, raising the wand. Sunlight hit a faucet in the crystal, and a bright beam refracted toward the ground. 2, he tightened his grip. Sophie closed her eyes. 3. Fitz pulled her forward, and the warm tingling in her hand shot through her body like a million feathers swelling underneath her skin, tickling her from the inside out. She fought off a giggle and concentrated on Fitz, but where was he? She knew he was clinging onto him, but it felt like her body had melted into goo, and the only thing keeping her from oozing away was a blanket of warmth wrapped around her. Then, faster than a blink of an eye, the warmth faded and she opened her eyes. Her mouth fell open as she tried to take it all in. She might have even squeaked. She stood at the edge of a glassy river lined with impossibly tall trees, fanning out the wide emerald leaves among the puffy white clouds. Across the river, a row of crystal castles glittered in the sunlight in a way that would make Walt Disney want to throw rocks at his magic kingdom. To her right, a golden path led to a sprawling city where the elaborate domed buildings seemed to be built from brick-sized jewels. Each structure was a different color. Snow-capped mountains surrounded the lush valley, and crisp, cool air smelled like cinnamon and chocolate and sunshine. Places this beautiful weren't supposed to exist, much less appear out of thin air. "You can let go of my hand now," Sophie jumped. She'd forgotten about Fitz. Her hand released, and as the blood tingled in her fingertips, she realized how hard she'd been squeezing. She looked around, unable to make sense of anything she saw. The castle towers twisted like spun sugar, and something seemed oddly familiar about them, but she couldn't figure out what it was. "Where are we? Our capital. We call it Eternalia. But you might have heard it called Shangri-La before." "Shangri-La," she repeated, shaking her head. "Shangri-La is real?" "All of the lost cities are real, but not how you'd picture them. I'm sure human stories rarely get anything right. Think of all the ridiculous things you've heard about elves." She had to laugh at that. The sharp burst of sound echoed off the trees. It was so quiet there, just the gentle breeze brushing her face and the soft murmur of the river. No traffic, no chatter, no hammering unspoken thoughts. She'd get very used to the silence. But it felt strange too, like something was missing. "Where is everyone?" she asked, rising on her tiptoes to get a better view of the city. The streets were a ghost town. Fitz pointed to a domed building that towered over all of the others. The green stones of its walls looked like giant emeralds. But for some reason, the building sparkled less than all the others. It looked like a serious place for serious things. "See the blue banner flying? That means a tribunal is in progress. Everyone's watching the proceedings." "A tribunal?" "When the council, basically our royalty, holds a hearing to decide if someone's broken a law. They're kind of a big deal around here." Let's see. Okay, so I'll finish this chapter. "When they happen." "Why?" He shrugged. "Laws are rarely broken." "Well, that was different. Humans broke the law all the time." She shook his head. She shook her head. Was she really thinking of humans as something other? But how else could she explain where she was? She tried to wrap her mind around the idea, tried to force it to make sense. "So," she said, cringing over her ridiculous next question, "this is magic?" Fitz laughed, a full-body laugh, like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. She glared at him. It couldn't be that funny. "No," he said when he regained control. "Magic is a stupid idea humans came up with to try and explain things they couldn't understand." "Okay," she said, trying to cling to the remaining strands of her sanity. "Then how can we be here? 5 minutes ago we were in San Diego." He held the Pathfinder up to the sun, casting a ray of light onto his hand. "Light leaping. We hitched a ride on a beam of light that was headed straight here." "That's impossible." "Is it?" "Yeah, you need infinite energy for light travel. Haven't you heard of the theory of relativity?" She thought she had him stumped there with that one, but he just laughed again. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Who came up with that?" Albert Einstein?" "Huh, never heard of him." But he was wrong. He'd never heard of Albert Einstein. The theory of relativity was dumb. She wasn't sure how to argue. He seemed so ridiculously confident it was unnerving. "Concentrate harder this time," he said as he grabbed her hand again. She closed her eyes and waited for the warm feather sensation, but this time it was like someone turned on a hairdryer and sent the feathers scattering into a million directions. Until another force wrapped around her and pulled everything back together like a giant rubber band. A second later she was shivering from a cold ocean breeze whipping her hair around her face. Fitz pointed to the massive castle in front of them, which glowed like the stones were carved from moonlight. "How do you think we got here?" Words failed her. It really had felt like the light passed through her, pulling her along with it. but she couldn't bring herself to say it, because if it was true, every science book she'd read was wrong. "You look confused," he observed. "Well, it's like you're saying, 'Hey, Sophie, take everything you've ever learned about anything and just throw it away.'" "Actually, that is what I'm saying." He flashed a smug grin. "Humans do the best they can, but their minds can't begin to comprehend the complexities of reality." "And what, elves' minds are better?" "Of course. Why do you think you're so far ahead of your class? Even the slowest elf can still trip a human. Even one with no proper education." Her shoulders sagged as Fitz's words sank in. If he was right, then she was just some stupid girl who knew nothing about anything. No, not a girl, an elf. So we are now on chapter 4, but we're going to stop there. So that's 2 full chapters for this video. So that's pretty good. So I will see you all in the next video. Also, have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukah, or whatever you celebrate. Or if you don't celebrate, have a good day. Bye!